recovered alcoholic. Tony, you got to unmute yourself, please, sir. Welcome to the Thursday night Big Book Study Workshop. We'll be going through the first portion of the basic text as outlined by who? You guessed it. The first 100 men and women who collectively put this experience so that we may benefit from it and recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And to start us off, we're going to get the set-aside prayer going, just because that's one of the prayers that when you get into it, you can really go, okay, I'm ready for tonight. I'm ready to be in the now. I'm ready for a new experience. Let's level some pride here. Dear God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself, this book, my illness, and these steps, and especially about you, dear God, so that I might have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please help me to see the truth. Thanks, guys.
Right on, recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony. Exciting stuff. There's the series we're doing is on sponsorship, taking people through the book, and in turn taking other people through this. We're at step 11. We're going to dive right into this, right? But we're going to hit a couple fast highlights, right? So if you kind of go to 76, it talks about there having done our 5. We kind of see step 6 of the stuff that we may still be hanging on to, the stuff that's kind of shaped our character, defects of character, things that are still making decisions for us. Anybody still have that stuff? Things from the past still making decisions for you today? Preconceived ideas, judgments, ideas, arguments, brainstorms, right? That chatter in your brain with this. So we see we still hang on to a lot of that stuff, right? And the acknowledgement that we're willing to let these things go, but they didn't tell us how to continuously revisit that yet, have they? This is just an acknowledgement that these things are here. And then in step 7, it talks about reconfirming step 3. That's what step 7 does, right? Because it says good and bad. That means it's not your job to concentrate on either one. Most people, when they talk about 6 and 7, they talk about the bad stuff. True or false? Here they say good and bad because it's not the idea of focusing on self. Nowhere does it say to work on 6 and 7. Has anybody got where you work on 6 and 7 here? That's the obsession of self, that self is going to start working on self here. Here it reconfirms that that's above our pay grade, that we become a product of our spiritual condition. When I'm spiritually right, everything's right. When I'm not spiritually right, nothing's right. Anybody kind of realize that? Yep. We've seen that through our 4 steps. So lack of power is our dilemma. So our main object now is to be tapped into that power. And as we're tapped into that power, we rise above our instincts, right? Those basic instincts that we realized in the third columns when we did the sheets. We've seen how this creates the unmanageability, all these things. So we're doing things that we don't want to do, and we're not doing things that we want to do. We all on the same page here? Right?
Yep. So
we reconfirm this. Right? And then what it talks about here is that what we're praying for is strength to do his bidding. That's it. Power, power, power. Then when we kind of look at the second part here, they talk about now we need more action. All the action steps say action in front of it. Anybody notice that about the book yet? And you notice 6 and 7 had no action in it? Yep. Its summaries, conclusion is preparation steps, because who does the work? Do we do the work, or does our connection to a power greater than ourself do the work?
Connection.
So we see that when we go through the promises, one of the greatest promises is the basis to all the promises. We'll suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves, right? And that's to tap in to this inner resource to create the change that we hope would be possible in step 2 that they gave us a solution to in step 1. So if they could do the miracle of removing this problem that's causing our demise, which is alcoholism, create a shift in our psyche sufficient enough for us to recover, are we all on the same page here? Yep. Then what problem would be left that you wouldn't be able to apply spiritual principles to get some form of relief or answer for?
Any problem. It'd be all good.
When you think of if it could rearrange your thinking sufficient enough for you to recover from an illness that has been killing you, that's pretty remarkable, right? So we minimize it. So we hear a lot of people, this is the way we think, right? Like, oh, I took care of my alcoholism, but I'm having a hell of a time quitting smoking. Well, why don't you apply the same principles to it? Oh, I don't know if it's going to work. You see the minimizing? See how we minimize this stuff in regards to other areas? No, I got to work harder. I'm quitting. I'm doing this. See the obsession again? Well, why wouldn't you bring that to a power greater than yourself or God? Remember, Bill talked about had a way of living that answered all my problems. My friend promised when these things were done, I'd have the element of living that answered all my problems.
Oh.
So pretty well. So we realize that our thinking has to be continuously revisited, retweaked, and relooked at because the great obsession is that we're going to take over. Anybody here? How many people have thought about a problem and prayed about it and thought, I don't know how God's going to fix this. I thought about it all week.
Yeah.
Come on, how many people? So you see how the mind, it's a kind of trickster. So you need to be able to look. So here it confirms that all my problems have originated out of my efforts to live on self-will. That's what the talks about here on page 76. We are now convinced of that. We're confirmed of that. Now they're saying, let's look at 8 and 9. Right? Let's look at it. So we read through 8 and 9. We get to the promises. And then on page 84, it says, this thought brings us to step 10, right? That we continue to do what we learned where? In 4 and 5, right? The humility, the application of these principles that create change. Learn how to master resentments, outgrow fear, and to direct our conduct in a way that is not being demeaning to me, to other people, and jeopardizing my sobriety. Right? Is that what the 4th step is? And then the conclusion of that on page 71 says, we hope you are convinced now that who can remove whatever self-will has been blocking you?
God.
God. And what's that self-will? Is the resentments, the fear, and the conduct, true or false, and the harms. So they're very specific about these things that cause our problems. So this thought, and then it talks about here, as we go through this, that we continue this way of life as we clean up the past. Right? So have we started cleaning up the past yet as we're reading through this? No, so they're starting to give us a picture here, right? Then they say our next function is to what? To grow an understanding of how to work on my behaviors, my triggers, and me?
No.
So again, it reiterates. Our next function is to grow an understanding and effectiveness of what? The spiritual realm, that power, this thing that we just tapped into. We just made connection to it. Remember in the 5th step, we may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. It's not my understanding of God that's going to save me from me. It's my experience with God that'll save me from me. Big difference, right? Right? So when you experience this thing, it's way different than your conception. How many people's conception got blown out of the water when you experience this thing? Pretty hard to talk about this thing that's happened. They call it a phenomena. How do you explain something that's unexplainable? It's just like, wow, unbelievable. Like you use these nouns of like a kid going to, Wonderland for the first time and having an all-week pass, right? Wow, yeah. You mean I get 3 flavors of ice cream? Wow. Right? It's kind of that you'll be amazed kind of stuff, right? And you get to experience that, but it's hard to transmit that to somebody who hasn't experienced. They need to experience it for themselves if you want what we have. So then, page 85, it talks about this problem being removed that we hope for where? In step 2. Did we not hope that this would be possible for us if we did the same thing they did? And what was that? To recover from this illness. Yes or no? And what they're saying is, we're still talking about this. Somewhere along the line, this will take place. Just because we're reading about it, or at this stage, doesn't mean it's taken place yet. Remember in the spiritual appendix, it talks about what usually takes place in a few months. Few months can seldom take place, right? Through years of So that gives us a timeline. We're not out of the woods yet, even though we're feeling good. And then they reiterate that. You want to read that, Joe? It is easy.
Lucia's reading tonight on 85.
Lucia?
It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition.
So we need to find a way to gauge that, right, without depending on our own thinking and emotions. So has they given me the instructions on how to gauge that or to develop this and to expand on this yet? They haven't given us those instructions.
Not yet.
It's just like when I get in my car, I look at the gauges, it tells me what it needs. If the oil pressure is low, you even have the gauge, the tire pressure, when the oil needs to be changed, when the oil in the car needs to be changed. It's nice to have that gauge, but anyways, that's a different topic. So they talk about here, and then so I'm able to gauge what the car needs by what's displayed on the dash. Are we with me on this one? So that gives you an indicator that something needs to take place in the car. You have a little sticker when the oil needs to be changed. So you have all these indicators what maintenance needs to be done on the car. Yes? We don't have that yet, but I need that. It's like when I go to the fridge or go to my pantry, I know when I need to do groceries. Anybody? If I go a day or so without taking a shower, my body lets me know. Like we get indicators what we need, right? Anybody? When I go to my bank account, if I haven't worked and I realize, man, there's no money, and there's indicators letting me know that further action needs to be taken. But with this, it's really difficult because I could delude myself into believing something's happening when it's not. Anybody? So I need to be able to gauge that, am I growing spiritually? Am I on the right track? Am I on the beam or am I off the beam? Where's the gauges to let me know that I'm not going too far off track here? Because left to my own thinking, I could think I'm doing well before I'm off the cliff. But it's always after the cliff. Anybody ever realize you're doing fantastic? And then sometimes you're so far removed, you wonder how you got that far removed. And then you come to, and you're conscious of sobriety and totally depressed, dismayed, and totally bewildered. Anybody been there sober? And that cloud comes upon you again, and you just can't shake it. And you wonder, how did I get here? I was feeling so good last week. You're in conflict with people, places, and things again, and you can't shake it. Your mind's taken over. You're in hostage to your emotions. You're no longer living in today. You're projecting in the future. Your past is crippling you again. Anybody? And you turn on yourself? How many people experience that? So, if you were able to gauge that coming on and you were able to take corrective measures before all that happened, how many people would like that? Or how many people want to stick to over here on 10, when the accident happens, then apologize, then talk to your sponsor, then how many people want the recipe before the accident happens or after the accident? Step 10 is after the accident.
Yeah.
The accident's already happened. Right? You're looking at your car, it's demolished. It says, holy shit, I didn't see the brake light was out. Right? That's kind of stuff. Well, make amends, call your sponsor. How many people would like to take care of those problems before they become a problem?
Yep.
So that's what step 11's about. Step 11's about utilizing this whole thing. It gives us the gauges we need to see if we're on track or not. Right? And when I stop doing these things in 11, that's the first indicator that I'm off track. Right? And that's why the second half here talks about every day is a day we must carry the vision of God's activity. Right? How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine be. These are thoughts that must go with us constantly. But how do I do that when I can't get past self? Anybody here can say they honestly do that all day long? Pause, pray, connected. How many people are more connected to you than anything else in the life? You're connected to you, meaning your thoughts, your ideas, your conversation with you. Blah, blah, blah. Zzz, blah, blah, blah. Zzz. You get so irritable with you can't even have a conversation with another human being. Anybody like that? They go to talk to you and you start taking it out on them because you can't stand you anymore. Anybody there? Or anybody ever ask you, hey, what's the matter? And you say, nothing. And then they ask you again, something looks wrong. And then you say, nothing. And then they ask you again, they say, well, it must be you because you must be the problem. And you let them have it? Anybody there? We're a weird bunch of people. We go to people, how are you? Fantastic. And then we go, really? Well, actually, I was thinking about killing myself. I'm leaving a rope. Like, you see the split personality? How many split personalities are there here? Right, okay, so anybody, I always like a good indication on your spiritual development is when you put the key in the door, do all the people inside pause? They're home again. Everybody pause. Right? Anyhow, so much. Go ahead.
Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense, but we must go further, and that means more action.
So we've entered the world of our spirit. Our next function is grow and understand to develop what? This sixth sense. Right? Not to work on the steps, but to work on our relationship with a power greater than ourselves and that intuitiveness. So we covered this last week. You notice that when it retires at night. So all the instructions bring us to step 11, which is the working daily step. This is the only process in the book that tells you to work on a 24-hour basis. Anybody notice that? If they wanted you to work step 6, if they wanted you to work step 10, if they wanted you to work step 1 or step 2, they would have said that in here, don't they? When Bill was in the hospital, he talked about his relationship with a power greater than himself. It's not about working the steps anymore. That's treatment center stuff. It's about working our relationship. What does step 12 say? Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry what message? This message, right? And to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Yes or no? So, Joe, are you tuning in here? So
Yeah, I'm just letting you do your thing, brother.
Awesome. So at night here, when we retire at night, we review our day. And anybody write that list out last week on how they do step 11? It's kind of interesting. The exercise we asked everybody to do is get an empty piece of paper, fold it in half, and write down how they do step 11. So what we're going to do here is just you're going to read right through this, and then we're going to break it up. So when we retire at night.
When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We are often surprised how the right answers come after we have tried this for a while. When used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it is not probable that we are going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd actions and ideas.
True, eh? No, sorry. Anyways, we'll get back.
Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely upon it. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be, that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no request for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. If circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation. If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we have been discussing. There are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one priest, minister, or rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Make use of what they offer. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, "Thy will be done." We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly, as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. It works. It really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. But this is not all. There is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12.
And step 12 is totally up to you and your reading and your studying and development on how better you can carry this message to other people. The rest of the book is designed on how to practice these principles in all our affairs. So by this time, they're saying by the time we get to 88, we see that we've covered the AA program of recovery. Have we not?
Yep.
In the first portion. If the change hasn't happened by now, can you go on to the rest of the book?
No.
So, actually no, right? Because we're carrying this message and the whole point is about being connected to a power greater than ourselves. Obviously, you can't transmit something you haven't got, right? It's not a behavioral modification thing. Yeah, you can carry the mechanics of this thing, but you can't transmit and carry this message. It's way different transmitting this message as somebody who's had the experience and somebody telling somebody how to get sober. Anybody ever notice that? You ever notice the people that have this thing? There's something about them when they're carrying this message compared to your counselor, who is not one of us. Right? Anybody ever try to help you out that's not one of us? There's something different about somebody who's been there, done that, who's helping you compared to somebody who has no idea what you're going through. Capiche? Yes? No?
Yep.
So that's
Yep.
what this book is about. Is the rest of it is, so step 11 is suggesting that I have this relationship. Is that not the whole point of the course of action? It talked about if we have carefully followed directions, which is from page 85 to the beginning of the book, from the first page of the book, which offers us hope, the story of how many thousands of men and women who have recovered from alcoholism, the story of Alcoholics Anonymous, that we are now a part of that story. We're a part of the collective, are we not? So here they're saying, on page 88, we alcoholics are undisciplined. So we let God discipline us in a simple way we have just outlined. Just outlined and have been outlined, does it mean the same thing?
Nope.
So what did they just outline as a form of discipline?
Step 11.
Isn't that interesting? Because the purpose of the steps is to get me connected, is it not? Which they talk about on page 85. If we've carefully followed directions, which is up to this point, right? If we've carefully followed directions, we have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us, but we must go further. So now, when we retire at night, we review our day. And here, we check into our consciousness, God speaks to us here. Hey, you didn't do this quite well, or you didn't do that quite well. You owe an amend, right? So when these things come up, were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid, resentment has to do with past events. Anybody ever notice that?
Yep.
Right? It has to do with stuff that we're carrying into today. On page 88, it says, "Thy will be done." We are much less danger of fear, anger, and worry. So, anger precedes resentment. When does it turn into a resentment? Is when we carry the anger into the next day. Does that kind of make sense?
Yep.
So you can get angry today, but it doesn't necessarily have to turn into a resentment. Anybody have a disagreement or a short word or something with somebody, and you're able to leave it alone and get over it and move on, and you don't bring it into the next day? The next day you bring up something from the day previous is a resentment.
Yeah.
It's like if you're driving to work and somebody cuts you off, and you get angry in a moment and you let it go. That's no problem. You don't think about it. If you think about it all day and the next morning you're looking for that guy on the way to work, that's a resentment. You see the difference? The carrying, right? So they're saying here, if I'm practicing this thing, I'm much more able to contain today's experiences into today, where they don't transfer into tomorrow. I'm not carrying. So the whole point, we see that we're carriers. Any carriers here? We carry things, and we don't even know we're doing it. Anybody ever tell people how many times they forgive them?
Yeah.
After you telling them, if you tell them again, you're telling them that you haven't forgiven them. You're still punishing them.
Yeah.
To forgive somebody means you don't repeat it again. But I like to remind people how good I am. I forgive you this time. Look how many times I've forgiven you. Well, not really. Look how many times you're bringing it up as an example. See the difference in our thinking? So, when we retire now, we review these things. What could we have done better? You know, there's always something we could have done better, right? And then they talk about where we're thinking of ourselves most of the time. Oh, now we know why people don't like doing step 11. Because we're thinking about ourselves all the time. Right? And then they talk about here again. Right? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection. That's self taking over self. Anybody have that? You start with a nice gentle thought, and then all of a sudden you're like, holy smokes, you become your own whipping boy. Anybody? If anybody treated me half as bad as I treat myself, man, I'd have to kill him. But we get front row seats to our mind, and that's what they mean by being undisciplined. Our mind it has us in the bondage of self, and we can't get over the difficulties, right? We're hostage to our thinking and our emotions to the precise extent that we permit these things. They talked about it in 4. Well, why do I permit them? Because I have an alternative way of thinking and being through spiritual aid. I can be free of these things if I put the effort, prayer, and seek guidance in those things. Anybody? It's like if I hold my hand up here and this was your resentment and you kept on staring at it, but I said, all you got to do is focus over here, and pretty soon this goes away. But we go, oh, where did it go? Oh, it's over here. Oh, where is it? Oh, there it is. We go back looking for it again, right? And we're there, yeah, and then it's like, oh, yeah, it's stuck, right? Instead it's going, let's peel it back. The more you remove from it, right, the smaller it becomes. It's like if you took 2 quarters or 2 toonies, wherever you are, if you took 2 quarters, they're pretty small, right? But if you put them in front of your eyes, how well would you be able to see? And back when I was getting sober, they used to say this. If you took a clear glass of water, and then you took a pen and dropped ink into it, 1 drop of ink, blue ink into that glass of water, what happens to the glass of water? Becomes consumed by the ink. And that's the same with our thought process. We become consumed by that, and it turns into. So what this is teaching us is what I need to do is to be able to become a bathtub. It may sound kind of weird, and then the ocean. So if I take that same drop of ink and I drop it into a bathtub full of water, what happens to the ink? Becomes consumed by the water, right? So when I'm spiritually fit and these things come at me, I'm able to not allow them to stick. I'm not saying they don't bother me or I'm disturbed, but I'm able to step back from it, right? And start matching calamity with serenity. It doesn't say I won't be sad, I won't be depressed, and life won't happen. What it says is I have an element of living that'll work and all going, that I'll be able to stand where I used to be crippled, that I'll find the internal strength that I need to face life on life's terms.
It's kind of like a filter through spiritual principles and prayer, right?
100%. So this is, if I'm taking care of today's business today, will those days start piling up?
No.
So when I stop doing my retire at night, am I getting closer to start stockpiling again?
No.
If I stop doing my
stop,
11s,
yeah. You stop doing it, yeah.
Well, I start stockpiling again. So those quarters will become close. So I'll start becoming consumed by life again. And so here they're saying, watch out for these booby traps that we get into, that we create. We create our own booby trap. Anybody would say that's true?
Yeah, we're wood collectors. We like collecting.
I mean,
holding on to it for
yeah,
winter.
we're at the cinema. We're at the cinema, and we want IMAX. We're in the front seat with the popcorn. Oh yeah! Then what happens? Oh my God! And there's nothing happening.
Yeah.
And anybody notice your energy when you're sitting there thinking about something that's not happening, but you're getting ready for it?
Yeah.
Anybody feel your energy, your depletion? Your anxiety? Anybody?
No.
How many people like that feeling? How many people like the anxiety that goes with fear?
Especially when you get a blocked call.
Yeah. So, and the anticipation of the amends that I need to make and all this other. So I'm starting to be consumed again instead of doing the serenity prayer, instead of stepping back from it. And just for today, what can I do today? That kind of understanding. What can I do about anything about these things? No, God, then give me the power to deal with them. Or, you know what? I have all these things that I'm going to do. That's why we have a list and a sponsor. And what we do is we kind of put little side notes on that list of how we're going to approach these people, places, and things. Right? And so when I start becoming consumed about it, I step back from it. I do the serenity prayer and realize I have a course of action between God and my sponsor and the people I walk with. I'll get through this, but I don't need to deal with this today. Just for today, I'll fight today. Does that kind of make sense? If I'm doing that, how well will my life start looking like? So that's where they say, after making our review, we ask who? God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. What do they mean by corrective measures? This goes again, we are undisciplined. So what that's saying is, am I applying self to self, or am I applying these spiritual principles for relief? Am I sitting consumed in worry and morbid reflection, or am I trying to find somebody to work with today? Am I seeing what I could contribute to life? Am I making a difference where I'm showing up? Am I helping at home? Am I doing the things that might make difference in other people's lives? Am I being a worker amongst workers when I'm at work? When I'm at home, am I at home? When I'm with my kids or loved ones, am I there? Interesting, right? So if I'm there, how well will those relationships start to flourish?
Like a mushroom.
But if I'm there physically and I'm not there, they know. Ain't anybody been with somebody who's not present?
Yep.
Anybody watch employees who are not present? Right? So we now become an example of something greater than ourselves, but we can't do that on our own power because lack of power is our dilemma. So on awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. And then they say, for after all, God gave us brains. So you see on one page, God gave us our will back. Right? First our sanity and then our will. Here, you can have it all back now. Let's work together. That's what step 11 is. Let's work together. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God as we understood him as a power greater. That's how we understand it, is accessing power that creates change. That's a collective understanding. Praying only for what? Knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. It's a collective approach, collective solution, collective experience. Pretty cool, right? So in the morning here, as I'm doing my 9s, I'm going to pray what direction I should take that day. Am I going to face this 9? Am I going to do this 9? Am I going to write this letter? Am I going to phone this person? Am I going to go turn myself in? Am I going to phone a lawyer? What am I going to do here? Am I going to seek counsel with my sponsor on these matters? And then as I start seeking counsel, what it talks about here, in thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration. When I'm in that moment, like I don't know what to do here. I'm making my 9, it's not going well, to be able to stop, not get attached to the anxiety or the fear, step back from it, pray, settle my spirit, tap into that inner resource, and still move to my game plan. Pretty cool stuff. But we need to develop that. We're not in it yet. We're still developing. That's why they gave us the template. 10 is the template. 11 is the completion. 11 teaches me how to bring this all into volition or working part of the mind. What they talk about here on page 87. What used to be a hunch or an occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. On page 88, we are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in a simple way we just outlined. What needs to become a working part of the mind? Working the steps? Or staying connected to source? That needs to be, because what happens is people can work the steps and not be connected to a power greater than themselves whatsoever. Anybody been there? I'm working 10, 11, and 12. I'm working on me. I'm in counsel with me. Me. Well, here's your chip. I don't know what happened. We're telling you what happened. You never got connected. Your reliance didn't become on something greater. You didn't formulate that relationship. That's what they're talking about here, right? Kind of, you want to read that again? What used to be a hunch?
What used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind.
So, if I'm doing step 11 at night, and I'm praying in the morning, and when I'm having problems during the day, stopping and praying and asking for direction, be it the serenity prayer, just to pause and acknowledge that there is something greater than me, is that not a development?
That's development.
It may sound kind of weird, and this is the best analogy I have. There I have a lot, but I have a rescue dog, right? It's a purebred Doberman Pinscher. He's high-bred, he's high-strung. I got him at a year. Very, very intimidating dog, like most of us. Very intimidating. Through love and guidance, and a regime of discipline, a year later you wouldn't even recognize this dog. But I need to stay on him, because if I don't stay on him, he becomes instinct-based again. And he's always trying me. So the more I stay on him with certain principles and ideas, the better trained he becomes. Does that kind of make sense? And if I stop training him or keeping on him or incorporating these disciplines with rewards and treatment and all that, it may sound kind of weird, but then our relationship starts to diminish.
Sounds like our relationship.
Yeah, heal. No. So does that kind of make it may sound kind of weird, but if we had the same relationship, right? It kind of, isn't that interesting? Right? Okay? Go ahead.
Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God.
Okay, so having just made it, do they confirm what step I should be doing right after I finish my 6 and 7? What step should I be doing right away after 6 and 7?
11.
Right, because in step 5 it says, we may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. Now they're saying, in order for me to survive me, or to survive this illness, I need to maintain and develop this daily reprieve. I need to keep this conscious contact. I need this relationship that removes the problem, right? Because if that relationship diminishes, what returns? The insanity of alcohol, right? And we drink again. Will I be able to see when that's happening? will I be able to see when I'm about to take a drink again?
No.
No, I won't see it. That's the baffling feature of alcoholism. It's a phenomenon. It's an unexplainable event, as explained on what page is that? 27? 37.
37.
37, right? It's this unexplainable event that parallels with our sound thinking. Now we have the gift of somewhere along the line it's removed, and we're applying these spiritual principles to our spirit to stay connected. And as long as I do that, I don't have to worry about the insanity of the first drink returning for the rest of my life. But if I stop doing this, somewhere along the line, will I pick up a drink again? That's the step one promise. So I need to find a way that says, am I on track or am I not on track? And this is the recipe. So if I'm not praying at night, I'm not praying in the morning, I'm not praying going through the day, I'm not working with people, I'm not seeking counsel, I'm thinking more than I'm living out of my consciousness, am I in deep shit?
Yeah.
Are all the indicators starting to go off here? All the lights starting to go off here? Right? Before it was a yellow light, now it's a check engine light. Right? I'm in deep trouble here, right? So then they're saying, go ahead, keep reading.
And we're a walking triangle, hazard lights.
100%. So, and then it says, if circumstances warrant, then if we read down here, which is really as we go through the day.
As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action.
Okay, so let's be honest here. Let's be honest. How many people do that? On a constant basis.
Yep.
Yeah, well, then you're better than I am because I don't do that constantly. I still, 31 years later, I still find I'm way better than I used to be. It is a working part of the mind, but sometimes I'll be engaged in morbid reflection, fear, anxiety, and I'll engage in that train of thought. I'll stay there and see the possibilities of what will happen instead of pausing and I'll allow the anxiety to build up. I talked to Joe about this. Sometimes I'll get certain thinking in regards to certain people that I'll entertain. Anybody? And I'll wait till I'm done with that thought, then I'll pray. After I'm beating them up, like emotionally, verbally, or anybody here? The grouch and the brainstorm? After I can't stand the feeling anymore, then I'll pray. Or turn on an inspirational tape or a thing. So here they talk about also finding other books or inspirations that talk to what we're talking about. Like Sermon on the Mount was the second book I read. It was a phenomenal book. Some people like the 12 and 12. I've never read the 12 and 12 again since I've done the big book. I did it for the first 11 years and nearly killed me, right? It's somebody else's experience of having done the steps. So I've done other church books, I've done other Christian books, I've done a lot of things along these lines of accessing power, the power of now. Like there's a lot of really good books out there that we could tap into. I've been getting more into CDs on spiritual teachings now than I probably ever have, listening to them all, more than I listen to the radio or stuff. So there's stuff here, right? And so when they say we're undisciplined, what that kind of means is as I go out to start cleaning up the past, do you think there'll be a lot of situations where self will try to cripple me and talk me out of it? So when I say we don't become John Wayne here. So as you go do your nines, what you do is you don't Shanghai people. What you do is you get their permission and let them know that you'd like to meet with them. And if it would be okay to do so. You seek counsel first with God and your sponsor. You pray about these things. On your morning meditation, how am I going to approach this thing? As I go meet these people that I haven't seen in a long time, do you think I'm going to have more reflection and fear?
Yep.
Think I'm going to have anxiety?
Yep.
Think I'm going to have that nauseating feeling? How would I take care of that? Pause. See, that's how many people heard of the fight or flight instinct here? That's ingrained in us, fight or flight. Here they're saying the pause instinct, which is a part of the family of the fight or flight instinct. How many people knew that? I didn't know that. There's actually three instincts. There's fight or flight and pause. Don't move. Right? You ever see those videos where where the cat's up against the wall not moving and the dogs are going by looking for the cat, or the mouse is in the wheel well of a car and the cat's looking for the mouse. If the mouse moves, he knows he's done, so he just stays still, right? And that instinct saves him. We don't have that instinct. The pause has never been our friend, has it? Because most of us...
But it's what we're trying to grow towards, right?
Yeah, 100%, because most of us, if we waited, we'd be in trouble. Anybody here grew up with if you pause, you're in trouble. If your friends are moving, you just start moving. If people are running, you just start running. Right? You ask later what's going on, right? And when you drank around my tables and the people I drank with, don't make any sudden moves. Anybody? You make a sudden move, everybody becomes, whoa, 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 right? You just move slowly and keep your hands out of your pockets, right? Anyways, so the pause. So what does that look like? So when I told you about the trip when I went to, from Vancouver to Quebec, it's for those in the States, entirely across the country by bus because I still had warrants for my arrest. So I had to take care of the family stuff first. People I haven't seen and seen. I took a bus. How do you think my thinking was along all the way between here? It took 3 days on the bus to get there.
Probably pretty crippling, eh?
Left to my own devices, but I sought counsel with those that went before me. My sponsor said, sit in the front of the bus. When you get to these bus depots, ask over the PA if there's any friends of Bill W. in the place. There was never none there, but I was focused, solution-oriented. He says, bring some cassettes. I brought the Grapevine cassettes on step 11, step 3, and I listened to these cassettes. He says, bring your big book. And bring books that I read, and I kept myself occupied. When I got agitated, I prayed for the strength, and I would read page 63 religiously. Page 63 at the top is the contract between us and God. It's a contract. And it's okay to call God on that stuff. So what happens is, and then I'd ask God for direction, inspiration, and people, places, and things to help me. And that lady on the bus was sitting beside me who was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous for 20 years. So what we're learning is to function within the realm of the Spirit, to see beyond our own explanation or understanding things, is to trust and rely on God, is to say, okay, God, this is your world. Let's see what you can do. And really remarkable things start to happen. So that when I went and turned myself in, I sought counsel, I got a lawyer, and then I turned myself in. You see the sequence there? Right? Yeah. And then before I went to turn myself in, I went to my sister's, and I met this guy. If I would have went a day later or a day earlier, I would have never met him. And we crossed paths. It was one of my sister's friends, my brother-in-law's friend. He gave me a card to his lawyer. I got a number to the lawyer. He was being vetted to become the prosecutor, chief prosecutor, or a judge. Something was happening. He was well known in the ranks. I told him my story, and he represented me. Right now, and when I went to jail to seek bail, they'd give me bail on 4 charges and not give me bail on the other charges. And I was going back and forth all the time. And when I was in custody in the holding cells at Don Jail in Toronto, which is a bad jail. It's like really bad jail. Like in the jail, there's a line where all the people of color were on one side and all the white people were on the other side. And there was a red line. I sat at that table. I didn't sat there and I just prayed. And I didn't pray for things. I prayed about things. And what that means is I said, God, you have me here. Allow me to be of service. I 12-step people while I was in there. Every day I said, God, if you want me here, I'll do whatever you want. Just give me the strength to do that. And I wasn't a prisoner within that facility. I was free. I had guys, nobody's ever asked me, I had guys walking up to me asking me, what are you doing here? You stick out like a sore thumb. You're like a bright light in this place. What are you doing here? And I'd get to tell them the story of Alcoholics Anonymous in my life. And they'd have all the track marks and they'd talk about their kids and their pain, and we'd be over in the corner together talking and doing a little prayer together. I said, if this is your will for me, God, I'm okay with that. When I left there, They wouldn't give me bail. They finally gave me bail. The St. John's Howard Society gave me bail on my own accord, like my own signature. But I had to sign in once a week because of the circumstances around my life back then. Then I met with the person, and then they said you can do it once a month. I didn't have the money or the means to come back, so I got a job. So I said, God, you know what? I need. You said you'd look after me. I need work. I need like to pay my insurance, my job, my apartment. I have nothing. So in my meditation, something said, go to this meeting over here. I was looking at the directory. Something said, go over here. I said to that voice, I don't like those kind of meetings. It was a speaker meeting. I don't like those speaker meetings. I want to go over to the club because that's where all the single women are. I want to go over there. I'm looking for a vision for you and a power greater than yourself. I'm looking to carry a certain kind of message, if you know what I mean. I'm 28 and a half. Work with me, people, right? And this voice said, go over here. I said, I don't want to go over there. I talked to this intuition like that. Anybody talk to that intuition like that? So it's a working part of the mind. I said, okay, I'll go over there. Like reluctantly, I went over there, I sat in a meeting like a 6-year-old. And this guy got up and he was speaking. He was a contractor. At the end of the thing, I said, hey, you know what? I told my circumstances. He goes, well, do you have any tools here? I said, no. He said, do you have construction boots? No. I said, all I got is basically the clothes on my back and another change of clothes. And he looked at me, he's like, wow. Something in his heart, he phoned me that night. He says, can you start work tomorrow? I worked with him long enough that I was able to stop. Then I found out he was an ex-member of one of the associations. Long story, it's pretty profound that we become his agents, right? So God showed up in my life in a way beyond anything I could ever imagine. If I didn't listen to that until I never would have went. And so they ended up, the lady who I was reporting to, I said, I need to get out of here. I can't stay here. My support and everything's back in Vancouver. My lifestyle that I was here, I can't be here because I got into the specifics about it. She says, it's okay, Tony. You go back and just phone me once a month. Pretty sure. So I was looking at penitentiary time, right? For these charges. They're severe enough that they wanted to give testimony why they didn't want me on the street anymore. So I went back for trial. And when I went in, certain groups of the police division were there to give testimony on whatever, without getting into it. We're on things. So my lawyer says, come on, in real fast. Just plead guilty. I went in, plead guilty. He says, okay, let's leave. We went outdoor. He says, just keep walking. So I kept on. I said, what's going on? He says, they dropped all the charges except for the failing to appear. He says, I don't know what you're into. This is what my lawyer says. He says, you must be kissing angels. He says, I've never seen that done in my entire career. And my mom was walking up at that time, and we had a strange relationship. We went to dinner. It was the first time I touched my mom's hand with compassion sitting at dinner. All by trusting and relying on something greater than that. And our relationship started to take a new turn. At 29 years old was the first time I had compassion toward my mom, where I reached across the table and I touched her hand and I said, I love you. Things are going to be okay. Like, what a gift. That's something from within, and that's what this does. It allowed me to face my demons. It lit up something inside of me that doesn't make any sense to me, that I was able to walk free, man, wherever I walked. And the greatest gift that members told me was this. They said, Tony, you'll never stand before any power greater than the power you serve. That blew me away. That blew me away. He says, remember that. He says, what you serve is a greater power than any power you'll ever stand before. And this is when you see stuff like that happening in your nines and things like that, and then it continues to happen through your life, then you don't doubt the power of God and the availability of that. And then what we see through this recipe is that the only limitation to this thing and the experience of it is actually ourselves. Right? So moving from an instinct-based life to a spiritually dependent life. People say, you still do this after 31 years? Yeah, why wouldn't I? The life I have today, my wife's upstairs sitting on the couch eating pizza. We're going to go watch some Monk after on my couch. All the windows have never been replaced in this place. The cops have never come here to drag me out. We have the same furniture we got married with. Like, it may not seem like much, but me and Mo always slept in the same. We made peace at night we pray together, we meditate together, and she's not in AA. We live a spiritually based life. She was able to see the wonders and miracles of God working in my life and the revisiting of these ideas in her life that made that she had the same experience as Bill, that her ideas of miracle were revised by the demonstration of this thing in my life. She's been a Christian her whole life. She grew up in a Roman Catholic church. But what she's seen happening here in our lives is remarkable. How like, it's just like I could go on for the next couple weeks, and I'm gonna. Next I'm gonna talk more about the magic and the application of this thing. But it's really wild. I mean, to watch God, when you tell people, it's like, when I kind of started doing this, I was unemployable, right? I'm vomiting green bile, I'm dying, and I'm just kind of like nuts, right? They want me to go psych assessment. My brother goes, remember, I'm just newly sober after going, and I'm lit up, I'm lit up. There's something different about it. My brother goes, there's something, and he says, the rent's due next week. I said, God's got this, man. He says, oh my God, now the bikes are parked out on the lawn. He looks at me, goes, oh my God. He walks in, he says, he goes to his wife, he says, he's lost it, he's snapped, he's gone. Because my brother going, hey, what are you going to do? They cut me off welfare, right? They want me to go for a psych assessment. And he says, rent's due next week, what are you going to do? I said, God's got this, don't worry about it, it's covered. That night I prayed, something said, go get a newspaper. Okay, I listened, I got a newspaper. I phoned this number. The guy says, can you start tomorrow? I said, yeah, I can start tomorrow. I started tomorrow. I worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I got paid Friday. I paid my rent. I paid the stuff. I paid, no, I didn't have, did I have a car insurance then? I had a car, but did I have a car? Anyways, that's another story. So then I went to work Saturday, and I got fired for threatening the foreman. I got all that I needed, right? See, that's what this is about, right? I got all that I needed. And read the contract this week on page 63. And this is the fulfillment of that contract, right? It's a So again, take a piece of paper this week, fold it in half, right? So what you do is just get a piece of paper, fold it in half, like this, right? So you got a piece of paper, you fold it in half. So you got this side, so when you open it up, you got the crease. On this side of the paper, write down how they do step 11 in point form. Retire at night. And so you get a rough idea how they do step 11. You know the information beyond that, right? All the way down. Then tonight, or the night you do it, some of you will probably be Sunday, but for those of you who are keeners, it's Thursday. So at the top here, you put abbreviation, it'd be like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, just the letter, right? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? And then Thursday, start over again. Take this list, put it aside. So then at night, when you retire at night, you ask yourself, did I do these things? Put a yes, an N, or a Y beside each one as you go through. Do that for a week, because what's the point of the exercise? Don't do somebody else's 11. This is your development. It's not a checklist sobriety thing. This is your development where this becomes a working part of the mind. You won't have that list. You won't have these papers when shit hits the fan. It'll be between you and God. And you need that anchor within inside of you that you could sit back in and realize you're going to be okay. Regardless of what you see and feel around you, you'll have a safe haven within inside of yourself. That intuitiveness, this sixth sense, that's what this is about. And next week, we're going to get into more application of these things. I'm going to tell you more stories. Next week, we'll conclude this thing, I think. But I'm going to tell you some pretty remarkable stories around Step 11, prayer, and 12-step work. It'll be mind-blowing stuff. I mean, stuff that will you think I was bullshitting if you never experienced it yourself. Remarkable. Thanks, Joe. Thank you all for being a part of this. I get lit up.
Thanks, Lucio, for reading. Everybody, my name is Joe. Again, thanks for coming out. We have the talks on the YouTube channel, Tony.R. Vancouver. We have the sheets there in the About section.